Hello and welcome to this week's preview show. As there's games coming thick and fast, we thought we'd use this one to shed a light on Huddersfield Town's Academy and the B team, especially obviously with, I think, 11 fixtures from now until the 2nd of January and 9 substitutes allowed in the matchday squad. So to help us do this, we've got with us today Emyr Humphreys, our Academy Manager, and Michael Tonge, who's just been appointed as an individual coach. How are you both? You okay?
Very well, thanks.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Excellent. And Ems, just starting with you, obviously, Michael's here, he's in the building. Talk us through why you appointed Michael to be the individual coach.
Okay, yeah. So the whole idea of the academy really is based around providing an individualised programme to each player that we have here. So when we reviewed the programmes towards the end of last season, we felt the next step of that was to provide an extra level of detail. So bringing in a coach with a wealth of experience of exactly what these players have gone through and what it takes to make that step up from coming in as an under-17, progressing over a 3, 4, 5 year period and making their way into a first team and everything that covers. So there's a massive mentoring side to it, and helping players with adapting to these different situations. And the other side of it is a real coaching detail and knowledge of being in them situations, how to solve different problems that they might face, some of the dark arts of what it actually takes to be a player in the Championship or Premier League, and that's what we believe Tonge brings to the table.
You've obviously, Tonge, when you saw the role, you've got a wealth of experience as a professional footballer, but also coaching. Why did you decide to come to Huddersfield Town? Why did you think this was a good opportunity for you?
Well, I think the club has obviously come on massively because it's just been into the Premier League. It's only been back in the Championship a couple of the seasons, and just from walking in the building, you can see that it's a club that's geared to be now in the Premier League consistently. And I think that when you look at the setup, the infrastructure, and like Emyr said there about the coaching sort of strategy, I think it's really attractive. And just being in the door a week, it's been great to see how it all works behind the scenes, and I've been really impressed.
How useful has that first week been for you?
Well, it's been really helpful. I mean, going in, there's obviously a lot of things going on. It's amazing to see how well everything is organised, how much these players have to help them along the way. I've had a chance to watch 3 games already, so you get a view of the players and where they're at. And just to be around the place, meet everybody, the people that are going to be working with, it's been a real eye-opener. It's been great.
Yeah, because, Ems, we've spoken in the past a lot about the plans for each young player and focusing on specific parts of their game. How closely are you working with Michael in terms of making sure that he then provides the right support for each player, and how long do you think that process will take? Because obviously there's a lot of young lads here in the building that Tonge will be working with.
Yeah, that's a big part of what we've done in the week that Tonge's been here so far, really. Just mainly setting up individual meetings with each player so they get to know him, he gets to know them, gets a bit of an understanding of where they've come from and where they're trying to get to. So not so much of that was football to begin with. It's more about getting an understanding of them as individuals and what their dreams are, what are some of their difficulties, and how are we gonna overcome that and get them to where they need to be together. Really, that's before you even start on the detail of the football, which is obviously a big part of it. But more just to getting to know them as people, and we'll carry that on over the next couple of weeks. So Tonge will get to fully understand all of our players.
How important is that, Tonge? As obviously a former pro yourself, you came through an academy system. When you know that someone with like your experience is taking time out of their day to get to know them as a person more than a player at the start?
Well, I think that's one of the things that I've obviously been so impressed with, in the sense of the relationship that the coaches at Huddersfield already have got with the players. And I think that's one of the key things. Like Emyr said, it's a case of understanding who you're dealing with, and certain players, you'll have to deal with them in different ways. They might respond in different ways, and I think that it's one of the major things that I'm going to be working with and trying to help people if they're struggling in certain areas. I mean, certain things, it might just not be football related. It might be something in normal life, but if you've got that relationship with the player and he can speak to you, it's only going to benefit him.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of beauty of football, and having people in the building who understand what the players are going through in their personal lives, but also then on the pitch as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for younger players, 17, 18 years old, things change within a couple of years. You can be in your first year, you may not play that much. You develop physically. By the end of your second year, you're at the top of the group. And that's, I think, one of the key things that you need to remind these players, that everybody develops at different rates. And I found that from personal perspective myself. And you don't want people to get sort of disorientated and frustrated and down with the fact that, yeah, I'm not necessarily playing at the minute. You've got to give yourself time to develop and build.
Yeah, absolutely. And the games program here at Huddersfield Town really allows people to do that and to develop. Obviously, the start of this season, we introduced our B team into the club. Ems, how successful do you think that's been this year? Because I've already heard supporters talking about it on social media.
Yeah, it's been really pleasing. It's only the start of a process, and we're definitely nowhere near where we want to be yet. But already so far, the standard of the games we've been able to get has been much higher than we've had before. With the Newcastles at the stadium the other day, Liverpool that we played against some genuine, like, top class Premier League players and things like that, which we haven't really done in previous years, I'd say. And that sort of B team feeling and that group is building all the time. I think as a group, they feel like they're much closer to the first team. They're training with them more regularly. A few of the lads are getting exposure to playing in the first team matches. So there is a feeling within that group and within the staff that there's something building. Mm. And that's quite exciting. And I think the fans can be excited about that, about what that's going to look like over the next 18 months, 2 years, because there's some really, really special players in that group. It's just about building that momentum, keep getting better games, keep giving them bigger challenges to overcome, to hopefully make that process of getting into the first team a bit easier.
Yeah, because there's different challenges all the time, isn't there? Obviously, you mentioned the Liverpool game when they were playing against some of the players, for example, that beat Leicester City in the Premier League at the weekend, and then there was games like the Salford match that gives them a different kind of test. How beneficial is that to all the players that take part?
I think what we want to create is where the games are as realistic as possible to what they're going to face in the first team. So sometimes that's playing at Anfield on a really nice pitch against really, really top technical players. Sometimes that's playing against Salford, who are a bit more direct and physical, but still a lot of players that are 25 to 30. And I've got a real, like, loads of knowledge about how to have a career, and them sort of, that's what we want to create with the players, really. So they're exposed to all these different challenges. So when they go to that first team stage, they've sort of seen everything before and nothing's new to them. So we want to expose them to all sorts of different styles, different emotions in them games. That's the key to it from our side, really.
Yeah, because the transition, obviously, for a young player from an academy to a first team is really difficult. Obviously, Tonge, you experienced it, you went through that and progressed. But how does this B team and this program in particular help with that transition?
Well, I think Ems has hit the nail on the head there. I think from a personal point of view, when I was coming through, there was a B team reserves and I always found it really helpful to be playing in some of those reserve games against first team players, because I think sometimes people get a much better feeling if you come up against a player who you know that has played in that first team. It raises your game first and foremost, but also you judge whereabouts you're at with regards and how far you need to go to step up to your first team. And I think that playing in those games create a much more realistic scenario of what you might face when you take to first team football. And I think that sometimes when you don't have those games, and if you're playing against, I don't know, if you're playing in just training ground games against players of your age, you just don't get come up against the same challenges, whether it's physical, experience in the game, and it just creates a better atmosphere and environment to try and improve.
Yeah, and we've absolutely seen that as well this season, haven't we? Obviously, Romany Critchlow was man of the match against Nottingham Forest. He stepped in and performed excellently. I can imagine when you received that trophy, you had a massive smile on your face.
Yeah, it was a really pleasing moment for a lot of the staff who've spent a lot of time with Romany over the last couple of years, and everyone knows his background and what he's gone through. So really pleasing just to see him excel in that moment with the first team, that chance he got, and just grab it with both hands. So yeah, it was a nice moment for everyone. I think the idea of that B team squad is to have a group of players that can step in and step up to the level when required. Obviously, that was Romany played before Naby was available, and Romany put himself in a great position now. If them chances come up again,
yeah,
Romany can be trusted to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can see in the squad as well. Obviously, I mentioned the number of fixtures that we've got coming up at the minute a little bit earlier, but we have 9 substitutes now. I think in the game at the weekend there was 3, 4, 5, 6 at least academy players in the squad or on the bench. That must be really pleasing now because of the number of substitutes that we're allowed. There's more opportunities, isn't there, for our young players?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great time to be a young player. I know people have the concerns about the amount of games and that's being well publicised, but from the perspective of a young player, it's got to be such a great opportunity. The extra subs means everyone's that little bit closer. There's 2 extra places on the bench every week. So people like Kieran Phillips and Brahma Diar and some of these other younger ones are going to feel a lot closer to this first team squad, and they're going to get little opportunities over the next couple of months. And I know the consequences of playing of so many games means there's injuries, which is obviously not a positive thing, but for some of these young players, it can be.
That must give them a real kind of excitement of an opportunity there, Tommy, don't you think? As imagining back when you were in an academy and a young player, if you see an extra 2 slots on the bench, an extra 3 possibilities to come onto the pitch as a young player there who's on the periphery of the squad, you think, right, if I can kick on over these next couple of months, I could be making my debut or I could be impacting the first team here.
Without a doubt, I think to be in the academy at the minute, especially at Huddersfield and any club really, the addition of extra substitutes, you get a little bit closer. Anything can happen in the game. Somebody goes down injured, the manager just might shove you on. Something can happen. You've got to be ready and you've got to take your chance. But, before, these sort of scenarios weren't arriving for players. And I think that if you're at Huddersfield Town now and you're in the academy, there's a lot of games coming up. You've got a real opportunity if you're at it and you dedicate yourself to getting into that first team.
100%. And Ems, you mentioned Kieran Phillips a moment ago. Obviously, people have started to notice him a lot more. He's been in great form with the B team. The B team certainly being talked about. First of all, on Kieran, that must be really pleasing for you that supporters are noticing what the B team's doing and highlighting how well Kieran Phillips has been performing. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's one of the aims of the B team, is to actually create a bit of interest in the players, or give the players the opportunity to create that interest in themselves. amongst the first team staff and the fans, and that's definitely what Kieran's done with his performances and his goals over the last month. I'm just excited to see where he can get. Really, he's just such an intelligent guy, one of the hungriest goal scorers I've come across. So I'm really excited if that opportunity or when it comes with the first team, because I think he's got a great chance.
How far away do you think he is from full match fitness? Obviously, he had a little injury at the start of the year.
He's been building up really well over the last couple of months. He's just been trying to get up to the pressing demands of what Carlos wants from the first team number 9, and he's improving. His GPS numbers are improving game on game now, so getting closer all the time, I'd say.
That's really fantastic to hear. And what's he been like? Because obviously he was in our academy before, I believe, then obviously went to Everton and has come back now. Is he relishing the opportunity of being so close to the first team?
Yeah, I've spoken with Kieran quite a lot about this, and he feels at home here now. That was one of the things when he first came back from Everton. Was just the feel of the place and how comfortable he felt here, which is really one of the really important things that we try and do with players and what we try and create for them. So I think we're lucky to have him, to be honest. To get somebody of that goal scoring ability is quite rare. So when we had the chance to bring Kieran back, it was an absolute no-brainer for us. And as soon as you meet him, you just see the hunger oozing out of him to score goals. It's just what he's thinking about all the time. Yeah,
I'm sure that's music to town fans' ears who are watching this. And obviously there's players out on loan as well. To name a couple, obviously Cian Harrott at Guiseley, Micah Obiero at Carlisle, who scored recently as well. How important are these loan experiences for the young guys?
Yeah, massively important. We see this as almost a bit of a trial run for them for what they're going to experience here. So they have to go through loads of different experiences and different emotions during them times on loan. So Scotty's out of the team at the moment at Shrewsbury, which is a great little roadblock for him because it's something he's never really experienced before in his whole life. He's probably always been one of the better players in every age group, always played up, never really had any real disappointment. So to be playing in a team that's struggling, to be in and out of the team, is only going to benefit him for when he comes back. Just thinking of what happened with Lewis at Bradford in a similar situation. Great to just see what happens in them dressing rooms. So when he comes here, he's in a much better position to take advantage of it, really. And similar with the others, with Micah's playing in quite a strong Carlisle team at the moment, so he's going to have to really fight to get his way into the starting 11. So that sort of pressure is what it's like. When he comes off the bench, he's going to have to take his moments and force his way in. He's going to have to be excellent in training to get ahead of some of the players that are playing at the moment. So it's a massive challenge for him, which will hopefully make him better for when he comes back here. Yeah,
it's all about creating those opportunities and giving them different tests. I can imagine, Tonge, for you, obviously you had loan experiences, obviously in different stages of your career, but what are they like from a player's perspective, and how much can you learn having to go to a different club, even for a short period of
time? Well, you do learn a lot. I mean, for me, from a personal point of view, I didn't go on loan till later in my career. But I think that it's a case of, I think, for the younger players, when you go on loan, it's putting you in a different environment and it's working with different people. And that's something I think from my role at the minute is what I can help some of the players who are going to do that with. Because sometimes people go in, not a problem at all, they're straight in, confident, not an issue. Other players are a little bit more reserved and going in and just being, well, I'm not used to this environment, it's a change for me, and that can be a struggle in itself. But I think that it creates problems which, as a football player, you need to come across to sort of overcome. And like Emyr said there, if you go on loan and you're not in the team, it's you as a player being able to work out, right, what do I do now to get myself back in the team? And I think that that's obviously when you are in that situation, it's a case of, right, I've got to work really, really hard in training, keep doing the right things and keep the right attitude, because whatever you say, coaches do recognise that 100%. Whenever I've been at a club, if you're out the team and you start moping around and you start not doing things properly, coaches pick up on it straight away. And if you drop out the team and your attitude's right, you'll get back in. And that's what I think I've got to try and help some of these younger boys with when they are in a situation where, in their careers, where they're, even if they're not necessarily going to go into the Huddersfield first team, they're ready to go and play some first team football.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the key objective. And Ems, it must be really helpful to have someone like Tonge, with all of his experience coming into the building, because he'll be seeing some of these young lads for the first time, won't he? He'll be having different opinions, and ultimately different opinions in football can then help the staff as a collective progress a player forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the really important things for us. It was that somebody could come in and see things with fresh eyes, and not, we've been working with these players, some of them for 4 or 5 years now. So we almost become biased on certain things. So Tonge coming in from the outside will have a completely different perspective, and he'll make up his own minds on certain things and what certain players need to do. So that's really important.
What have you made of the young players so far, Tonge?
I've seen that we've got a lot. Well, everyone I've come across so far is first and foremost a really good person, and I think that's absolutely vital in football and in a group. And everyone seems really willing to learn, and to have that is vital. But I think we've got some really good players. I do. I've watched a few games so far. You can see it's getting a judge of where everyone's at, but there's some real quality in there, and you can see that everybody is open and willing to take on sort of the principles what the coaches are trying to give to them. And I think it's a really good environment within the academy.
You must be excited about being a part of this project and helping a young player progress into the first team.
Absolutely. I think, like Emyr said again, Romani making it through to the first team, when you see something like that happen, that's really fulfilling as a coach, and that's success if you get people through, because you've got to be realistic with these things. You can't get a full team of players through to the first team. It doesn't, to your first team, that doesn't always happen. But when you get one through, that's a real success. And the aim is to get as many Huddersfield Town players in the academy careers in the game. And I think that's what the boys have got to try and take on board, that they're doing it for themselves and they've got to give it absolutely everything they've got.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, there was 5 or 6 players who were in the squad, the matchday squad, for our game against Stoke City. Ems, obviously, we've got Wycombe tonight. In terms of the substitutions and the experiences for the young players, how good is it, the opportunity for them to travel to an away game with the first team, to get that whole experience, especially somewhere as far as Wycombe is? Yeah,
some of them things are essential. Some of them things can actually be more difficult for the players than playing the match itself. It's if they haven't experienced that before, what do they need to do the night before? How do they deal with singing on the night before with the players? How do they deal with that uncomfortable situation? How do they conduct themselves around some of the more senior players where they're probably feeling quite nervous and having to spend time and communicate with people that they're not used to, or all them sort of things? How do they deal with the pressure of the day, being in the dressing room, the real detail of preparation, all them sort of things? They're more difficult than actually playing football sometimes. So to get some of this exposure and travel with the first team, which a lot of our players have this year, is essential, and it's only going to put them in a much better place.
Do you remember your first trip away from home, Tonge?
Yes, yeah, I do. I'm trying to remember whether I had to sing or not. I can't remember. But No, it is. It's really exciting when you travel with the first team, and it's real when you get there. Realization of this is proper. This is work. I mean, there's results on the line, and you really do have to just take in and absorb as much as you can. See how the players prepare for games, what it's like in the changing room. How the warm-up runs, everybody's focused. And it is vital, and I think really helpful when players can go away and travel with the first team and see that.
Yeah, it will make a massive difference. Just have them travelling there, even if they're not in the match day squad. I mean, like we said earlier, obviously we're facing Wycombe Wanderers. Are they a good example here of a team playing for or to a specific system, and it really kind of bearing fruit for them?
Probably no one was expecting them last season to do what they did, but just a really good example of having a group of players that are really bought into something, that are playing together with a bit of passion and belief, which is similar to us, really. I'd say a different style, but having that collective buy-in from everyone into a way of playing, and that togetherness is absolutely massive. It's what we're really trying to create, and what Carlos is trying to do every day. And I think they're a good example of what you can do and how exciting it can be when everybody's bought in and everyone's on that journey together.
What's that like, Tonge, in the dressing room when everyone knows that they're in it together, that you see the philosophy throughout the club and everyone's got the same passion and drive to succeed what you are aiming to do?
Well, I think it's obviously a crucial ingredient, really, because if you look at Wycombe, they're a group that have been together for a long period of time, really, and they all buy into what the manager wants them to do. I've played against Wycombe myself on a couple of occasions, and one thing, if you play against Wycombe, you have to do, and that's compete. And if you don't compete against Wycombe, they'll turn you over without a shadow of a doubt. They'll 1-to-1, they match you up, and they'll battle with you. They're very direct, but they've obviously got quality as well. But when you've got that togetherness, it takes you a long way. As Wycombe have showed. Not too long ago, they were in League Two. They're now in the Championship.
I was going to say, obviously, you mentioned it there that you played against Gareth Ainsworth's side. How far do you think they've progressed in terms of style? Is it still a similar identity from when you played against them? What's really changed?
Well, if I'm being honest, I haven't seen them play that much this season, but I don't think their style will have changed that much, to be honest, because when you've been successful with something, you tend to continue with it. And I think because it's a similar group, I'm sure they've tweaked certain things, but I think in the main, they'll still be as hungry to do well. They compete with you. What they'll try and do is they'll try and outwork you, and they'll think if we outwork them, we'll have a better chance of winning the game. So obviously for the Huddersfield boys going down to play them, you've got to be ready for that first and foremost.
Yeah, it will be a really good test, especially for the young lads, those that are starting or in the squad, in terms of what Tonge's just said there, to make sure that they're aggressive in their 1v1s, but also that they have to outwork the Wycombe players.
Yeah, I think it's a massive test for any young players that played tonight, just because of that physicality and work rate that Wycombe are going to bring, and reliant on set plays and some of that direct play, which can be some of the hardest stuff to deal with for a young player, just in terms of winning your duels and doing that key stuff in both boxes that actually wins your matches. They can be some of the hardest parts for young players, so it's going to be a really good test. Yeah,
and they're 22nd in the Championship at the moment, but they come into this game off the back of a 0-0 draw with Brentford, who obviously performed very well against Huddersfield Town earlier this season. It shows, Tonge, doesn't it? Obviously, you've got loads of experience, like I said earlier, in the Championship, that anyone can really get a result against anyone in this league. There's no easy matches whatsoever.
No, there's not. It's one of the most, if not the most competitive league, in the sense of anybody can beat anyone. Top can play bottom, bottom can beat top. I think purely to the fact of the number of games that you have, that is one of the issues that creates that situation. people are playing Saturday and then it's a quick turnaround to Tuesday. You're not always feeling, well, you're not always going to be at 100% going into the next game. And if you're not mentally, it's a mental thing as much as a physical thing. If you're not mentally prepared for what's coming in the next game, a team will turn you over. And I think actually just going back, Wycombe's a perfect example of what Emyr said about a player playing against a Newcastle or a Liverpool and then playing against a Salford. So, you know, you could play, if a younger player played against Stoke on Saturday, I guarantee you the way that game went on Saturday will be completely different to the way this game will go on Tuesday. And if you've not experienced that different type of situation, you get to Wycombe on Tuesday evening and you're like, what's going on here? I'm not used to this. I've not been exposed to it. And that's what these sort of B-team games are all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just finally with you, obviously you've been keeping a close eye on all the young lads that are at the club, but specifically those that are on the periphery of the first team. How impressed have you been with them on the whole that have stepped up into Carlos Corberán's plans?
I think there's been some good performances. I think, being honest, I think the key for all of them is just building that consistency and making sure they can do it game on game, which that's going to take them to the next level. I think they're all going to try and replicate what Lewis did last season and is doing now, and he's churning out game after game at a really high level. That's where the rest have got to aim for. So there's a few that have had little tastes, like Romani, D'Amico. The key for them now is putting it all together week on week and staying in that team, which is hard. Probably more, like Tonge's mentioned, more mentally than physically. It's dealing with them emotional highs and going again on Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, training well, not having dips, all them things.
Yeah, absolutely. The consistency, Tonge, just with you finally, is the key, isn't it, to this? That when you're a young player, I've heard people say it's easy to make your debut, but it's even harder then to get into that first team, hold your spot down regularly, because they demand consistent performances from you.
Absolutely. I think that's the key part really about that sort of transition into the first team. If you're a B team player and you're playing there and you're a good player, because you must be a decent player to still be there, making your debut is sort of the easy part, because you've got some talent and you've shown people why you're there. But then it's staying there and getting in the team and staying in the team, because that's, from a personal point of view, I've seen a lot of players come through at different clubs that I've been at and they'll make their debut, but then they sort of fade away and they don't have that continual career at that level. And I think that's the most difficult part, to just consistently play at a high level and know what's required to do that. And that's the most difficult part of being a player, because you've got to try and work that out in your head and be able to reproduce that day on day.
There we go, Huddersfield Town fans. Hopefully we've been able to provide you with a good insight into the workings of the academy and some of the young players that will hopefully be progressing into the first team. Ems, Tonge, thank you very much for joining us. If you're watching this, you can purchase a match pass to watch tonight's game against Wycombe Wanderers for just £10 on iFollow HTAFC. Unfortunately, that's the only way you can watch the game, as it's not available on Sky Sports' Red Button. Thank you for watching.